everyone, and welcome to the channel. In today's myRanch tutorial video, we're going to talk about property zones. This will be a two-part tutorial, and in this first part, we're just going to look at a general overview of property zones. We'll get into more details in part 2. So let's get started. A property zone, or zone, is a logical grouping of sensors that corresponds to the way you manage your field operations, and it's the primary place you'll go in myRanch to view your sensor data. In agricultural applications, zones usually correspond to irrigation blocks, but there are other ways to use them. Some growers create zones to compare data from multiple sensors across their entire property, such as air temperature, or zones to monitor their equipment's diagnostic sensors. Sensors can be in multiple zones, and there's no limit to the number of zones you can create to organize and view your data in meaningful ways. So let's start with a quick tour of how the Property Zones tab in myRanch is laid out. At the very top, we have the Property Zone toolbar, which includes the property selector. If you have access to more than one property, this is how you will toggle between them. Other functions are over on the right, and we'll talk about those later or in a future video. Just beneath that, we have the zone selector, and that's how you toggle between your different zones. On the left-hand side, we have widgets that show the most recent sensor data. On top of the graph, we have the graph toolbar, which includes the date range selector and some other functions over on the right that we'll cover later or in a future video. Finally, we have the data graph, which includes the plot areas and graph legend. And we have what we call property view settings, which is a couple of preferences specific to your user profile that control which option for the zone selector and the default date range of graphed data you see when you select a widget. So to change those, we go up to the property toolbar, select property view settings, and then we have our zone selectors. Now, right now I have this set on static grid of small tabs. The first option is a carousel of large tabs, and this scrolls left and right to toggle between zones, and this is the default setting. We also have a drop-down list, which moves it up here, and here you can toggle between the individual zones by selecting one, or you can use the left and right arrows to toggle between them. My preference is the static grid. We also have the date range, default date range. The default is 1 week, but you can make it any duration you want, out by hours, weeks, days, or months. So if I want to say 3 weeks, and now you can see I'm looking at a total of 3 weeks worth of data instead of just 1 week, which is the default. Now let's get into the details. The data from each sensor is shown on what we refer to as widgets, and the information on the widget includes the sensor description. Every sensor type has a default description, but you can change that description to suit your needs. Everyone with access to the property will see the same sensor description. Next is the most recent sensor value uploaded to the server and how long it's been since the timestamp of when that sample was taken. Finally is the RSU ID of the unit reporting the data and the port and subport programmed on that unit to sample that sensor. Next up is the data graph. Today we're only going to discuss the default graph functions, and we'll cover all of the ways that you can customize your graphs in a future video. When you select a zone, myRanch automatically selects the first sensor in that zone by default. Now you might be thinking, wait a second, why isn't this one the first one selected? In the case of a weather station, we automatically add a forecast widget. So this isn't actually a sensor, this is a data feed from a forecast provider, so that's why this is the first sensor widget that is selected. If you want to change the date range of the sensor data that's shown, you can use one of the predefined selectors. You can enter a custom date range. Or you can left click and drag across the graph to select a section, release your mouse, and now you've zoomed into that level. And when you zoom in this manner, you can use this little back arrow at the top to go back to the previous view. You may have noticed that the graph's X and Y axes are automatically scaled based on the current date range. The graph legend shows the sensor description and a numerical value to indicate the sensor type. The sensor type determines how the unit communicates with the sensor and how myRanch interprets that data to display it correctly on the graph. You can also get a basic analysis of the graph data by clicking this little button right here, and that will give you a min-max average relative to the date range of data that's currently on the graph. So if we change the range, now we have the updated values selected. You can also click on these values to put in a temporary plot line to show you where those fall. And we can click this to close it. And when we refresh, those plot lines disappear and we return to our default view. When you select Graph All, sensors that report data on a similar scale will usually be combined into a single plot area. So up here, for example, we have temperature and relative humidity. And since they share a common unit of measure, they're all combined together. This plot area is for rainfall, and since that's in inches, that's why it has its own plot area, and so forth. If you want to temporarily exclude one or more sensors from the graph, you can click on the sensor description in the legend to toggle turning those on or off. And as you notice, again, the scale of the axis adjusts automatically. So that concludes our overview of property zones. I hope you found this helpful. Be sure to check out part 2, where we'll practice creating and managing zones. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.